Welcome everyone to this week's video. Today we are on Fish Friday number 114 and we have a good one for you today. Today's fish is one of the strangest fish I have ever heard of. Definitely super cool, just don't judge this fish by how it looks. Today's fish that we're going to be talking about is the Mangrove Rivulus fish. Now, the Mangrove Rivulus fish, or scientific name Cryptolebius mammaretus, and that's Cryptolebius mammaretus, it is part of the family Rivulidae, which is known, that family Rivulidae is known as the South American killifish, or the New World killifish, but it's actually I have in my notes that it's a poorly defined family. It kind of is, but it kind of isn't. It's the common names for the fish themselves, but how that family is commonly known is a little bit misleading. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at is it's not the only family of killifish in South America, or the only killifish in the New World or the Americas. So calling them New World killies or South American killies is a little bit misleading. So, yeah. In terms of where they're found from the coast of Florida, all along the coast down to Brazil. And as the name would suggest, they're typically found in areas with mangroves, very much associated with those mangrove root structures, right along the coastlines, up in the estuaries of the bays, things like that. It's where you'll really find this. So obviously this fish is fairly shallow. It has a wide tolerance actually for temperature. During my research, I found out that it could tolerate extremely low temperatures and extremely hot temperatures. You'd expect those tolerance towards those warm temperatures, but seeing how they could actually have those temperature tolerances at the low end was fairly impressive. In terms of size, this is a small fish. It's max up to about 7.5 centimeters long, which is about 3 inches. And it's usually about 1 to 3.8 centimeters, which is 0.4 to 1.5 inches. It's actually just small. So if you found a 3-inch on this, a 3-inch long one of this fish, it would probably be it'd be impressive in terms of this fish. It's usually an olive green, kind of with like these speckles of orange and black found throughout the body. So just really bizarre. I mean, kind of bland coloration. It's got this very flat back with kind of an upturned mouth. That's actually pretty normal for most killifish, even different killifish. They have that flattened back and they're eating, all these things with that upturned mouth. That's just fairly common. So if you've ever dealt with killifish before, you kind of get the general body shape. They got these small rounded fins. The back fins seem to have pretty speckled. The fins are actually set a little far back in the body. And they're pretty indicative by this ocellus right here, this eye spot. Dark with a cream colored outline. That seems to be fairly prominent throughout all specimens. Now, the diet of the Mangrove Rivulus primarily consists of worms and copepods. Mosquito larvae actually is right there. So now you might be saying, well, Ping, why did you choose this fish? Well, this fish is really cool. Why? Nothing I said had made you think this cool. Well, this fish is actually really cool for 2 reasons. And one of them is that the Mangrove Rivulus is actually an amphibious fish. They can travel across land, and I actually have a video for you. If you watch here, so Mangrove Rivulus, this is Nat Geo Wild. Whoop. It actually jumps across the land. This apparently was older fish they can jump farther than younger fish. they attribute it to muscle neural connections. There it goes. But that's actually a fairly, they do that in a very synchronized. You notice all these fish are throwing the head back to the tail and then doing a tail whip to actually get that propulsion. And they do actually have aim to where they're going. Like, it's not just they're just like flopping, you know, they'll go in a circle. They do actually head in a single direction. So it's definitely, it's a really neat thing. Now, you know, you'd think that amphibious fish, you know, they're traveling across land, you know, how can they survive? They can actually survive out of water for around 60 days, potentially longer. I've heard of some, or I saw some that, you know, theoretically go up much longer than that, but these fish can survive for around 60 days. They'll live in leaf litter, and they're found a lot of times in like decaying logs where it's really moist. I mean, they still have to stay moist just like all amphibians, so they'll get underneath leaf litter or they'll get in these decaying logs. But one of the places you can actually find them the most when they're on land, where there's actually I saw a couple of places say that they actually spend most of their time on land instead of in the water. You actually find them in crab burrows, specifically the great land crab. Its burrows are really where these fish like to go. They go in these burrows, and you can find, there's usually one or two, but one crab burrow found had like 26 of them in there. So it'll actually live in these crab burrows. And the reason why is because these mangrove estuaries, I imagine, go dry fairly frequently. They live in these seasonal ponds. That's where they spawn and sort of live in their water time. And they just spawn, and then when the waters recede, instead of going out with the waters, they go find a log to live in or a crab place to live in. Really unique. But that's not the only reason why this fish is. I should mention though, the reason how these fish are able to do that, they have specialized skin. They have epidermal capillaries that allow them to absorb oxygen through their skin and expel the carbon dioxide. And they have modified gills that allow them to hold water in there to keep those gills wet, but they modified their gills to like hold in water and nutrients. So that's actually how they're able to survive on land. But that's not the only reason why this fish is actually super interesting. This fish is actually super interesting because this fish, and this is the actual interesting fact we're going to end the video on. This fish is the only known example of a self-fertilizing hermaphroditic vertebrate. I'm going to say that again because it's kind of hard to process, and it was for me. This fish is the only known example of a self-fertilizing hermaphroditic vertebrate. All these fish, from what I understand, all of these fish start out as hermaphrodites. Some of them do transition to males, but a lot of them stay hermaphrodites. And they can internally fertilize themselves with sperm and an egg to self-fertilize themselves to essentially kind of make a clone. But it's not actually cloning, that would be more like parthenogenesis, which is where, you know, you have clones, but that parthenogenesis is not actually done with a sperm and an egg. It's just with an egg that goes under meiosis, I believe, not mitosis, meiosis, and so it actually attacks to that. So they unite inside the fish's body, and it's just bizarre to kind of think about it. And there's actually specific genetic. If I read this correctly during my research, if I read this correctly, there's an actual genetic component that causes a certain part of the genetic code to fail, but that failing is why you don't have that massive inbreeding problems that you would have. So for those of you who have dealt with any sort of genetics, you know that inbreeding over the course of multiple generations is usually very bad for the species. It causes a lot of genetic problems because of genetic markups. However, apparently the mangrove rivulus fish has been a self-fertilizing hermaphrodite for several 100,000 years. This is not a new evolutionary trajectory. It has been like this for a very long time. And from my understanding, it's actually because a certain part of the genetic sequencing, when they undergo their self-fertilizing process, it fails, but that failure causes the inbreeding depression to not actually happen. Way bizarre. It's way beyond my understanding of genetics. But if you are interested, I do highly encourage to check out. For those of you who also might be interested, and who don't know, if you are a big fan of TikTok, you might have heard of the TikToker Ocean Philly, or if you're a Twitter person, Brooke Fitzwater was her name, and I don't know her exact Twitter, but Brooke Fitzwater is her name. So if you're on Twitter, look her up. If you're on TikTok, Ocean Philly. She does small TikTok videos about fish. Very, very person. This is actually what she did her thesis on. So yeah, just really cool. But thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. If I don't, please be safe. Have a great day. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you do. I'd really appreciate it. Hope to see you again. Take care of yourselves. Please leave a comment below if you'd like to see a fish species. The comments have been absolutely amazing recently. Thank you so much for the support. And first off, lastly, have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.